We did all the festivals and we were so broke.
Yeah.
That's the problem with a little bit of the problem being the indie filmmakers. You have to like kind of pay. We paid ourselves zero.
But I think it was like our first like real lesson. It was like, you can get a movie that gets good reviews, has a pretty good festival run, and gets distributed, and you're still at square one when you.
Okay, welcome back to the Hollywood Hang. The Pierce brothers horror film The Wretched opened in drive-in theaters on May 1st, 2020, and was the #1 movie in the US for 6 consecutive weekends, making it the first film to hold that record since the release of Avatar in 2009. At a time when thousands of theaters were shut down, major news outlets churned out headlines that credited Brett and Drew's film as forever redefining how we measure box office success and leading the drive-in resurge. The film is now available to stream on Netflix, where it is currently ranked in the top 10 most watched films in the US and continues to release internationally. Brett and Drew Pierce, thank you for hanging with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys.
We are very excited.
We were just saying that because we've recorded a bunch of these episodes now, but you guys are kind of the first ones that we don't actually know. Like personally.
This is like fan level.
Oh, gotcha.
We've gotten there now. We're like, look at
pretty normal Midwest guys. I mean, we're brothers. All we do is work together, so I think you'll be okay.
which is insane because my family, we have a rule that we don't work with family like that.
Oh, really? Yeah. I don't know how I wouldn't work with this guy. Honestly, it's too hard doing it by yourself. So
that isn't so. Okay, so. You guys have always done this together then? Like there was never a time when you were trying to go it alone?
Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe me briefly in high school only because I was older than him and he was too young to be thinking about it yet. But that's it. It was probably for like 1 year. So
we just grew up with this whole, we grew up amongst our dad who is, worked as an effects artist on The Evil Dead. So we grew up with this lore of like, it's the only way, just scrappy, like work with your friends, your family, whoever you can get. So like he was the closest person around.
Our experience was that with Dad was they finished that movie kind of in our basement in Detroit. So there was just all these guys sleeping over at our place and finishing this movie. So that like taught us like, that's how you make movies. You make all your friends stay at your house and force them to work on the movie. So it's a weird mentality, but I think that's the only real reason we kind of started working together and recruited friends all the time and stuff.
You keep them in your basement. You're like, keep all friends in basement.
Yeah, keep them fed. Don't show them a lot of light, and they'll do good work. No, I'm just kidding.
Was it like a horror household, or were you guys watching all kinds of movies?
It wasn't really. I mean, it was a weird thing. Is our dad was just a big Ray Harryhausen fan. He just loved monsters and special effects, but I never really thought he was like geared towards just horror. But it just kind of ended up working out that way because Dad made a horror movie. So his 2 little boys got obsessed with watching this like unrated movie they should never watch. And it was kind of like down the rabbit hole after that. And honestly, I was terrified of horror till I was about like 14 because I would sneak in the basement and see these horrible things that they were doing. And it kind of scarred me, but it also made me fascinated with it. So.
Yeah, our dad transferred like movies back in the day. He'd like oversee the color correction and that kind of stuff, like to VHS. So we had this cabinet full of horror movies that like when we were like 10 years old that were all like the ones we'd slowly move up the ladder towards. So, yeah, always had like the Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 cassette that we were like too young to watch, but we're like, are we going to move to that next tier?
Yeah, and they were like VHSs that were like kind of labeled, they were like the ones you buy in the store. They just would have a sticker on them because Dad had transferred. So I don't think my mom really knew like how many movies in there we shouldn't be watching that we could pick from. Yeah.
That's like an interesting kind of life to have because you're in Detroit. Like that is not a normal upbringing in the Midwest. Like did your friends all think it was really cool too? Or like what was like, and how did that even come to be that you're in Detroit and this is your dad's gig?
Well, it was like, I mean, we were growing up in Detroit. My mom and dad had bought this little like HUD house from the city and had, we were pretty poor, type of thing. And we were growing up there and Dad was doing effects in the basement, just making short films of like monsters attacking my mom and all this stuff. And he ultimately just ran into like Sam Raimi and his buddies like through mutual friends, like at screenings. And they just roped my dad into doing the effects. And that's kind of where it went from there. Dad was working a day job as a bank teller and at nights working on Evil Dead through the night with everybody else to get the effects finished. So yeah, that's kind of how it happened. So it was like, you know, everyone in the neighborhood thought my mom was nuts. She invited this entire film crew into her house. They destroyed a lot of things and brought cockroaches into the house and all this other stuff. But it was just, I don't know. I loved it. And just like all our friends, like growing up, they thought it was really cool. But I think one of the weirdest things for us is we perceived weirdly Evil Dead as like bad or a failure because neighbors and other people like, oh, your mom let those kids in to make that crappy, horrible movie. You know, that was like the perspective. Like it's this bad movie they made that's gory and disgusting. And I can't believe your mom let those guys do that.
And at the time, it wasn't successful. I think it was like 2 or 3 years later that it really blew up.
Yeah.
Like after Stephen King said, the scariest movie.
Yeah. And I got like my first job out of high school was at a video store. And that was like the first time I realized like Evil Dead was cool because people would come in like Evil Dead, the best. And yeah. So it was kind of, it was weird. So
I feel like there's like a kid's coming of age horror movie in there somewhere about these kids whose dad does, you know, he does the effects for all the scary movies and all the stuff's in the basement, but the stuff's all alive or something.
It makes me scared that he was a banker. There's something like so eerie to me that during the day, this man goes to a bank and is like, I'm professional. And then is like, comes home at night and is like, now make monster.
Yeah. Well, I think my dad, he just had parents who were like, you have to have a real job. And that was programmed in. My mom, to give her a ton of credit, she was always like, so they were making my dad go to school to be, I think, a psychologist at the same time. And my mom was like, you're staying up all night doing special effects. Why don't you go to the special effects program at Wayne State University, go into film? And so like she was really pushing that. So, you know, I think he owes it to her.
Wait, that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
So in terms of the like get a real job thing, having your dad work in that industry as you guys got older, and I'm assuming you're kind of like watching a lot of movies, making movies, even if it's just for fun, was your dad like pushing you either to do this or not do this? Or like,
I think if we told our parents we were going to be like a doctor or a lawyer, they'd be like, no way, what's wrong with you? Like our parents are total hippies. My mom's an artist, my grandma's an artist, my dad did special effects. So I think there was no way we weren't doing something creative. It felt weird.
They're just both totally supportive of it. They've never griped about it once. Dad's always, I mean, honestly, Dad took us to movies every weekend. Like movies were just like part of life growing up. Like because he got a job finally, he was like Drew was saying, he was transferring VHS tapes, like transfers of movies for 20th Century Fox in Michigan, which seemed weird, but like, he made us like the coolest kids on the block because he got Return of the Jedi like 6 months before it came out on video. So every day in Detroit, in this little crappy house, our like 10 little Rugrat friends, we'd all pile in and watch Return of the Jedi. I'd be like, this is magical. We have it 6 months before it ever comes out, you know, and stuff like that. So
parents, we're going into our whole therapy, but our parents split up and our dad moved out to LA when we were like teenagers. So when we were, 13, 14, 15, our entire life, over the summers, we'd come stay with my dad for 2.5 months and we'd basically go see like 2-3 movies a day.
Yeah.
My dad worked for 20th Century Fox. So we just wander around Hollywood like 13-year-old kids. I mean, can't really do that now. And we'd go to the Chinese Gromans and go see a movie and then wander around, go see another movie. Like that was our entire childhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every holiday was a movie. Like that was just.
Yeah. I felt bad for Mom because we'd have to go back at the end of summer and go back to school. And it was all like, staying with Dad is so much cooler than you, Mom. Which I feel.
That's such a, I don't think people in like 6 months early, like you used to really have to wait to see things out of a thing. Like that's wild. No one can comprehend that today.
Yeah. Well, it's just weird to think because I mean, we were living in this not so great neighborhood in Detroit and we happened to have one of the first VHS tape decks or something. And it was only because Dad worked there and he had gotten a job somehow working there. So it was cool. It was a fun couple of summers. So
did you guys think you would go into effects work, or was the goal kind of always to write and direct to make movies?
I think the goal was always to make movies for both of us. I have kind of an art background. I always wanted to do like design and all that kind of stuff. So I went to school. I think it was just looking at colleges and stuff. You realize there's no real program to teach you to make movies. You know, we had friends going to AFI. We're like, I don't have $100,000 to throw at that. So I went to art school. I went for animation and ended up, when we moved out here, I was working at Futurama and doing that whole world. That was like, 8 years of my life out here is doing storyboards and animation stuff.
And I went to the same film school as my dad and ultimately dropped out. But we were lucky where we grew up is we had a group of friends that we kind of came out of high school with, and we were all making shorts and features on the weekend. So we'd made a lot of really bad features and shorts by the time we were like 19 or 20. So like even when I was going to film school, it kind of felt like they were like teaching me things I'd already been doing for a couple of years. So it was a little like, oh, here's your homework. Write the first 30 pages of the script. I'm like, well, I already have 2 scripts. How about here's the first 30 pages of one.
Every summer we'd shoot a feature either ourselves or with our friends, and work on their features. And then we'd rent out the local theater for like $1,000 and charge all our relatives like $20 to come to the premiere. That was our sort of film school.
Yeah.
You guys, I don't know how to explain this, but you guys are what everyone like needs to do today again. Like, I don't know if this has come full circle to that, or if you guys also still have been like, this is the way we've always felt. That's never changed. So you come out here. Do you also join him?
No, we come out. Yeah, we came out together.
Got it.
Dirt poor and just basically trying to find any junky position in the film business. This guy got an internship at this horror company called Raw Nerve.
Yeah. They were making Hostel at the time, the Eli Roth. So I kind of got got to dive into the deep end and see that kind of all come together. All the ups and downs of that and everything, because they were at the same time guys just trying to hustle to kind of get that movie financed and made, and it had a lot of ups and downs itself, but they eventually forced it through, But so I was working there, and then weirdly enough, that company folded just as Hostel got financed. It was a very weird situation, but they still made one movie. And then just bounced around as like a PA on like a bunch of low budget horror movies, and then eventually weirdly ended up at Fox Television Animation working on American Dad as a PA and stuff like that. So it was just a series of PA jobs, and then eventually like a production coordinator job, and then like a production manager job,
all the while it's just burning us that we're not making movies. At home we had no rent, no whatever. We were just pumping stuff out with our friends. So we basically did the stupid thing back then. We took out a student loan,
I faked going to Glendale Community College.
Yeah, $25,000, and then we got somebody to match $25,000, and then we found a bunch of friends to invest $10,000, and eventually we cobbled together. How much did we get?
It's like 120 grand.
20 grand, and we went and shot this very ambitious indie movie. It's like a genre like road trip zombie movie. It's ridiculous, called Deadheads. We it was made with bubblegum and duct tape, but it was a great experience for us. It was like the most money we had ever had, because usually we made our indie movies with our friends on weekends for a couple $1,000s.
But we went back to Michigan because we knew we could get away with murder back home, and got a lot of people we had grown up with that we worked on stuff to come work on it, and kind of like fought our way through it. Not really, knowing a little bit of what we're doing from working out here, but also kind of getting punched in the face the whole way, realizing we didn't know exactly what we were doing most of the time. So
I was going to say, do you feel like there was you're making movies in Michigan, and then you come to these sets, were you like, no, I can do this better? Or were you like, oh shit, like there's a lot more that we could be adding to our movies?
I think it's the same feeling that everybody has, is just like, how are they wasting so much money? We can do this for nothing. But that's, then you get into it and you're like, we can't afford anything other than pizza when you actually get a budget.
Yeah. I did realize though, I was like, when I watched all this stuff, I was like, better organization can make this work better. And like some positions that we were shrimping on our older things, we're like, if we just have somebody that's devoted to doing that, it's going to make our lives so much easier. And we did kind of learn this appreciation really quick of like, it's really about like, as a director, like one of the most important things you can do is just really hunt down the crew you want to work with and be very, very particular and try to sniff out and make sure they're the right person for the movie you're making at the time. Because when you don't have that, it's like the worst thing in the world. So,
and what did you guys do once you finished that movie?
We did all the festivals and we were so broke.
Yeah.
Because, I had saved up like a little bit of a nest egg. I quit Futurama. And by the time we were done with the movie and I had credit card debt and everything putting into the movie, we're just buying people food. Like we don't have enough budget to make this movie.
Yeah.
I was like $20-something thousand in debt. Went from like plus 20 to below 20. So we just bottomed out and we both had to get jobs just to survive or move back home with our, mom or something. So Brett got jobs in reality TV, which he hated.
Yeah.
On a lot of the adventure, sort of like Ice Road Trucker kind of type shows.
Yeah.
And I worked as like a freelance storyboard artist on commercials, TV, anything, which is a great job. I loved it. It was so much fun. And it paid well. So I was able to climb out of debt. It took us years to climb back out of the hole that we had dug. That's the problem with a little bit of the problem being indie filmmakers. You have to like kind of pay. We paid ourselves zero on the movie and just basically lost a lot of money.
And it's like, the movie did come out on Netflix and it got released worldwide in other territories and stuff.
And it's made its money back.
It's made its money back.
Sold to Netflix for like $100K. It was a very cheap indie, so.
Yeah. But I think it was like our first like real lesson. It was like, you can get a movie that gets good reviews, has a pretty good festival run and gets distributed and you're still at square one when you.
That's like what we talk about a lot, which is just like, this is such a gig to gig economy and like it's nice to like have the job in the background where you're like, I could go back and storyboard. I can go on these like unscripted shows and like make sure that I'm not so stressed that I can't be creative for my next project. Cause like, that's just such a barrier.
Yeah.
I always feel like too, like part of it is finding a way that you can still get reps in and think creatively all the time. Like as a storyboard artist, like I basically get to practice directing every day. Like half the time you're coming up with, you're rewriting projects. Like I got to work on movies too. I got to work with the Jim Henson Company for like a whole year on the movie called Happy Time Murders they made with Melissa McCarthy. Over all that, kind of a wacky movie, but like you end up pitching and changing story stuff all the time as a storyboard artist and reworking and fixing ideas. I got to work with Seth Rogen on The Interview, which was really fun. And, I'm pitching comedy ideas and changes to Seth Rogen. It's like it was just like a really great learning experience.
I did not realize, it's funny. I'm working on a pitch. I do the pitch decks. And so I kind of work with a lot of writers and directors on that end. And there was a director I'm working with right now. And he's like, I'm going to bring in some of the storyboards I've been working on. And I've never really I don't know anyone that does that job. So it's kind of cool to hear that like if someone is listening to this and they're like, I could do that job while I still work towards my real goals.
And there's a lot of freelance work in it, which is great. I kind of climbed to the top of that world at the biggest agency. And I haven't done it in like 5 years. It's like, I basically was like the pro basketball player that's like, no, I'm not going to play basketball anymore. And it's a blast. I love that work, but it's so much fun. I think the thing that is frustrating about it is you can't ultimately control the idea. You're kind of trying to shape and you're kind of trying to stay within. That's the problem. You're trying to stay within your boundaries. You don't want to push too hard or change things too hard. And we're writers too. So there's so many times like, honestly, one of the big moments is when I was at the Jim Henson Company. I ended up pitching a bunch of script changes, which is, I knew Brian so well, who Jim Henson's son, that I felt comfortable doing it and the producers there and all that. But it's just, I realized I'm starting to overstep my boundaries as like a storyboard artist.
You're getting antsy.
Yeah. So I think it's just hard for either of us to keep our mouth shut if we kind of think like, well, this would fix it, Yeah. It's like, I solve a problem. It's okay. It's okay if it's my idea. You don't even have to say it's my idea,
So you guys are doing the grind, trying to pay off the debt, doing the other jobs to get to the passion projects. And in that interim period, is there a script that you guys have? Is there a dream project that you're trying to get together?
Wanda the Wretched kind of came along, and it kind of came along because I was like, man, I'm doing really well at this reality show company. I'm really moving up the ladder, and I think they're going to move me up more. God, I got to get out of this.
I got to go.
Yeah. And so I was like,
they're offering me benefits. They want me.
I got to run.
Yeah, time to get out of here.
Yeah. I mean, it's the most. It makes no sense. I've done it to myself twice now. And so I was just like, I had this real bug to like write this witch movie and kind of do a new witch story based on some mythology that I liked. So I started just going in early every day at like 6 and writing before my essential shift there would start. I'd write for like 3 hours. And over a summer, I finished a really shitty draft and shared it with Drew. And then we just kind of kept trying to get it to a good place for like another year, kind of on the side, because we're still working. And then, we finally put it all together, did a lookbook, made all the pretty things you need to do the dance and all the other stuff. And we got, production company attached to it for a while that tried to go to cast and it didn't work out. And ultimately we were like, this whole dance, it took like a year and a half, nothing happened. And we're like, let's just try to raise the money ourselves with some people we've already been talking to. So we just put it together ourselves. We just kind of took their budget, which we were like, we think we can make this for like half or even less than half of what they say. We chopped it down just looking at it ourselves. And we went and raised that amount of money off of independent investors. And then we kind of put the whole production together to shoot in Michigan ourselves.
We kind of took what we learned from the other movie and pitching people. And we're pretty good at getting people excited about projects. We're really into pitch decks because that, especially for investors and that kind of stuff, because that the thing people they want to be sold on the creative and all that kind of stuff. So we just, push that whole angle as hard as we could.
Yeah. But we just kind of were like, let's treat it more professionally. We need like a real full crew. We're going to do something because the other thing too, we just knew we like made Deadheads and we're like, every time you make a movie, you got to like punch up. You got to be like trying to make the bigger, better movie every time, even if it hurts.
And at the time, Blumhouse, this is like 7 years ago when we were like putting this idea together, is we wanted to compete with like the Blumhouse movies that were all like between $2 and $4 million. $4 million was like the bigger like Get Out, right? And we were like, we can probably achieve like a better quality sort of production with like $2 million.
Yeah. Because
we know we can do it non-union, independent, the way we do it, scrappy, find all the locations ourselves.
Yeah.
So that was kind of our plan, is like, how can we, because all the Blumhouse movies, we had pitched to Blumhouse and they basically said the most they're ever going to give like young filmmakers is at the time, this is, 6 years ago, is $1 million. Like you're never going to get more than that. And that's basically a one location, no big set piece stuff. You basically have to pitch a ghost story movie, or
in fact, somebody had Blumhouse and they were really honest with us. They were just like, it's a guy with a knife outside and there's a woman inside a house and that's the movie. And we can do that with you.
We love action horror. I think that's where our passion is the most. Like we're big, James Cameron fans, but just big we love big set pieces and all that kind of stuff with our horror. So we wanted to step up and we wanted to do a lot of body horror. So we just kind of grinded it out and pitched every person we'd ever met with money.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy because like to watch it is like, it's not small, but it's not a ton of locate. You know what I mean? Like when they're serious, they're serious when they're saying, no, you will stay at the house. You will not to be wandering outward.
Yeah.
Which is so crazy. 4 characters and in the house. Yeah. It really makes a difference.
Yeah.
But I think that action horror element makes it feel bigger. And it almost also kind of goes back to like Evil Dead, right? Like there are sequences in that movie that very much evoke, even on a small scale, that vibe.
Yeah. I think that's just us also reaching for what we like. And it's challenging with an independent movie and not having a lot of money. But we've kind of realized like it's to our advantage to do that because you got to set yourself apart from because I think people a little bit, especially with horror, they're starting to feel the one location thing. Like they start to feel the budget. They feel like it's the parameters of producers and trying to stay cheap, not a good concept to be there, so not that you can't do one. And there's been some amazing ones, but I know I feel that way sometimes is I'll see a trailer for something like that and I go like, okay, they're going to be like in their office in the first scene. And then the rest of the scene, they're going to be in this cabin. And that monster that I think's a monster, the shots I saw in the trailer, the 2 shots, that's all I'm ever going to see in the, kind of thing. You can start to sense it, So, and we were like, let's just try to do something that feels bigger, even though we're smaller than most of those movies. So.
And for the people, the independent financiers you found, was that the people you met from Deadheads, or was it throughout your careers kind of meeting people? And did you meet management or agents in this period as well?
It was, the weird thing is, not weird, we came off of Deadheads and we couldn't get a manager or an agent to save our lives, even though it was like released and on Netflix and all this stuff. It's just there was no interest. And I think it's because it was a low budget movie. It was like $200K ultimate. But
eventually got hip pocketed by an agent. Yeah, Bruce Campbell hooked us up with kind of like a very low end kind of agent.
I think he was an assistant. The assistant kind of became an agent while he was with us.
Didn't really get us any meetings. We didn't have any heat or anything off of Deadhead, so it was just kind of like, it wasn't really useful. At that point. But
but the investor thing, it was honestly, it wasn't like, it was just like we would talk to anybody about it that had money, and ultimately it ended up being randomly somebody that came to Drew's wedding that we talked to over the table, and it wasn't
friend of a friend.
And we weren't even hitting it hard, but they had just turned out to be a really big movie fan. And because Deadheads was on Netflix and like, there was at least some awareness of like, oh, you've done this before. Like that was really what it took, to make it happen with them. So.
That's kind of something we talk about a lot. You just have to put yourself out there. Like you're just talking about at a wedding, but like you just really never know unless you're brave enough to be like, this is a dream that we have and a thing that we want to do. The Eli Roth, the Town interview came out today, and he kind of is in the same vein right now, being like, I want to find anyone who likes horror to come in on this. And I think that horror fans are the nicest, sweetest, most dedicated group of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're like the best people to take anything to, because they just want, they want everything to be good. They'll give anything a shot. They'll root for something that even might feel a little cheap and not perfect if they just think it feels new and unique and cool. It's awesome. But they do sniff out like if a studio makes something that's just like way too commercially, like we're trying to hit all the benchmarks of how you make a horror movie that makes money, they turn against that in like a second. It's really fun.
I also feel like the audience can sniff out filmmakers that like are only trying to make a horror film because they know they can probably make it and it's cheap. Which is like shockingly something I have heard people say before, and I'm like, just lie and say you love the genre. You're gonna piss off the horror family.
We're always telling people that, like, when they, because we've met with a lot of like first time filmmakers after The Wretched did well, they're like, how'd you do it? And we're like, well, it kind of really took a whole nother movie to make this movie. but we're always like, whenever sometimes we meet with, don't make a horror movie unless you really like horror movies. You're not doing yourself any favors. Like the only way to make any movie is make a movie you really want to see. It's like, it just doesn't make any sense. It won't work.
I can't imagine being like, I'm going to dedicate my life to something that I don't quite love. I don't know. Like you just know your heart, someone's heart is not in it. Guys, this like closet behind me, I know we're just talking horror, but I am just, like something has got to come out. Yeah, like I'm so paranoid.
Back there, yeah.
I'm like, I've been like thinking randomly. I'm like, do I have to get up and close it? I won't, but.
Yeah. Did you guys hear that the Final Destination filmmakers did like a Zoom? Did you hear about the Zoom pitch gimmick thing they did when they were pitching on Final Destination? They from the article I read, I'll have to dig this back up, but they were pitching on that as like an OWA. They do their pitch for like, this is going to be the new Final Destination. Somehow at the end of their Zoom video, they had rigged it with VFX so that it like they die on camera at the end of the meeting. I think they get like decapitated or something.
That's pretty cool. That's kind of the smartest thing you could ever do.
Exactly.
That is
now there will be like people doing that on every pitch for every horror.
They didn't just do the fake choke thing. They just weren't like,
but okay, so wait. So The Wretched comes out. You guys are like, we made this movie. There's literally no global event that could mess up the release of this film. And then
it was the blessing and the curse for the movie, because it both squashed a lot of things, but it also allowed us to pivot to drive-ins, which it was only going to go into like 15 theaters like they do and then be mostly a streaming release. But because Black Widow got punted and all these other movies, our movie dominated drive-ins, which is great. They expanded it. Max it ever got to was like 101 theaters, but we were like 100, like full occupancy across the board in every theater for, essentially like a month and a half, which was really cool.
Yeah.
I think I saw it at because did it play at Mission Tiki?
Yeah. It was there for like 2 months or something like that.
Yeah, we would go see it there, and we'd stalk around and try and listen to like teenagers like talk about our movie.
Yeah, that whole part of the pandemic is a little fuzzy for me, but I would drive all the way out to Mission Tiki because for a moment in time that was like the cool thing to do.
Yeah,
and I think they were doing a lot of like double features, and you could also sometimes see stuff on other screens. So I would see it playing, and I think it started playing after a movie that I saw. But that was, that's also such a fun, like when I think of drive-in. Even though that was only my first time getting to do that, like I do think of horror,
Yeah. Well, I think our movie just lucked into being kind of like, it does kind of fit as a drive-in movie. So it was like weirdly like just, perfect situation in some ways.
Yeah, we
like
were heartbroken for our sound designer doing his 7.1 mix and then having to hear it out of the speaker. It was cool. It was a cool setting.
I feel like it's like a little lake town. Like I feel the summer, like I feel like it just feels that world. And so for production, you guys always knew you were going to go back to Michigan. Was that? Got it. And was that written into this? Like you were like, this, it's just a lake town,
Roughly,
Michigan?
I think it's just our home court advantage, like a lot of filmmakers do. And we know, we just knew we could get a lot of free stuff there. Yeah. And when you're a local, we shot it where my in-laws live, and they ran that local marina, or they were part of it. They ran the boating school there. So we kind of knew we could get that marina. We wrote it into the script specifically. It was like a different career and a different thing because we're like this, free production value. And we ended up getting that marina for like $300 for like a week and a half, which usually would be like another $40,000 on the production.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of advantages back there.
It was mostly locations and like people willing to help us out.
Yeah.
But ultimately we did run into we brought most of our crew from New York and LA. We had to, it seems weird, we had to drive all our equipment out from LA. It was actually cheaper to rent everything in LA than it was rented in Michigan, just because they're so used to car commercials there. And they charge really high amounts, and they don't really do the thing where like, oh, I'm making a movie, you can rent the camera gear for 6 weeks. They just go, 6 weeks. It's, 1 day time.
Interesting.
Usually you rent a package for like 3 days. You get a full week, but they don't do those deals. They're just like,
I feel like Chicago is very excited. Like whenever you tell someone in Chicago that you're not doing a commercial, you're doing a movie, they're like, we'll give you the equipment for cheap. Put us in the end credits really big and thank us on social media and we can have something.
We tried to pull that and work there, which is a bummer.
Yeah, but we got
a lot of other advantages.
Beautiful locations, and like the other side, just it's one of those things that you get. It's like we were in a really beautiful, nice place, so we had a much happier crew and cast because when they're not working, they're in a place they really like, and that goes a long way. If you're sticking them like in a shed and it's freezing outside, then they're like,
we basically had a resort on a beach, the whole cast and crew. We were stuck at the house where we were shooting the locations, just Brett and I. We had to tend to these like rabbits that we had in the movie and feed them every night. We were just like miserable. But our cast and crew, they had the best time. They would like send us pictures of like hot tub parties and stuff. And we're like, what's going on? What are we doing?
Yeah. They would always pack them and leave at the end of the day. And there was like this end of the driveway that went down like the road 20 miles to the city. And I just felt trapped. Like I never left the end of that driveway.
That was our big excursion. We'd walk to the end of the driveway and there was one restaurant at the end. That was like our break. Every once in a while.
So compared to your first film, obviously the second film, pretty big hit. Like the horror community was buzzing. What was that experience like when that came out and when that was happening? Like, did you guys have a rep at the time? Were you suddenly getting tons of horror meetings?
We had signed with Gotham Group a couple of months before that because they had come to a screening at Screamfest in LA and they really loved the movie. And we decided to go with them. And it was with a young guy who had just transitioned into being a manager there.
Is Nick? Is Nick on your team?
Nick McCain.
Yeah, I know him. He's
Nick's
great.
He's awesome. Nick's the best. And he to give Nick all the credit in the world is he got us into every room for months after that. And he had a good reason. We were in the press, so it's an easy way to get it, but he just hustled his butt off. And
it's great too because he's a legit horror fan. There's so many reps that are pretending to be in horror, like you're talking about filmmakers.
Yeah. So we got to meet with everybody up and down that had ever like touched a horror movie, but it was still a little tricky because there was COVID and nobody was making anything. So it was kind of like really great to meet you guys. We'd love to make something. You guys are super talented. I don't know if we're making movies anymore, you know? That's my thing. So that's the way
it feels like, wait, we're back in that moment in time again now, right?
Yeah.
That one, I got blacklist, and then I got to meet all these managers, and it was very exciting. And then I finally picked one, and then it was the strike. And I was like, okay, well, momentum gone.
Yeah. So yeah, it was great. We got to meet with everybody. And ultimately when, we got a little past COVID, Drew and I we landed some pitches and got some writing gigs to write and direct some stuff that we were really excited about. And ultimately, like some of those are still like could possibly happen. Some of them are just like dead as far as I know. We
got to talk to anybody and everybody who's ever touched a horror movie in this town, which was exciting, but nobody's making it.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, hey, this is great to meet you. So we've sort of made some connections, but it's it was kind of brutal.
Yeah.
Everything was just shut down for you.
Yeah. It was like we had the thing everybody wanted. We had some like juice because of the movie, but it was like the juice isn't gonna be, you know how it is. The juice lasts you maybe 6 months or a year. And, but we were able to keep it going and we did get those gigs lined up and it worked. I mean, we've been lucky enough to only be working on film projects since then. We don't do day jobs anymore, but it's just at the same time, it's still a gig, like a gig economy. You finish one, you're like, oh shit, what's the next thing? I got to find something, it's like.
And in terms of those meetings, the stuff you guys are pitching on, for the listener, I feel like this is immediately going to be like a drinking game. It's like me mentioning IP to the guests. But were you guys, were you pitching? Because this always happens, right? Like whoever the fresh, like what's the hot horror or what the hot anything movie right now?
Yeah.
It's like, get them in to pitch on all the IP. There's a horror movie come out this year. And I was just talking to the director and like, same thing. It's like, get him in. He's in the DC room. He's in this room. This always happens. So was there a ton of IP that you guys were pitching on, stuff you were being sent?
Every bit of
name an IP and we'll blink twice. I mean, there were times where they would throw out like 3 things that they're trying to move on, or like we'd get packets of all the Universal monsters and which ones they're really keen on sort of pushing
I've
forward.
gotten those packets,
a lot of that kind of stuff. And then,
and we pitched on a lot of them.
Honestly, it was a good experience. Yeah, we pitched on a lot of them. And I think that's been one of the big learning experiences and kind of hearing this from a lot of people that go through the water bottles sort of tour thing is like, unless you have an advantage or you kind of know, you always want to know how many people are pitching on this. What is my in? Why would they be particularly excited about me before you invest a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever you're going to put in? Because we go kind of overboard with some of this stuff. We'll put together like really elaborate pitch decks that we thumb through. I'll Photoshop stuff together, or sometimes sketch stuff up. Like
all just monster designs because he has that background. So pretty extensive.
So it's kind of it's always like, is the juice worth the squeeze with these pitches?
Yeah.
And that was
I think about half of them we pitched on were really worth pitching on, and the other half probably weren't. But we could only learn that by over time. Like there was one, and I don't want to name which one it was, but it was so frustrating because it was ultimately down to like 2 of us, and this was after 6 months of pitching it, repitching it.
Let me explain though. You do like you meet with them about the IP and give them the little like 3-sentence blurb of why you're excited about your idea. And they're like, that is awesome. Come back to us and tell us more about it. So then you come back, you schedule the meeting, it gets punted. It's like a month and a half later, you come back, you pitch it again. They're like, that's great. Now we got to tell the other executives about it. Come back in a couple weeks. So then you do that and you keep, by the end, you've literally like built out the entire structure of the movie. You have the inciting incident, the midpoint, the end, all the big
every twist and turn.
And you almost are rehearsed at that point. And we got to the point with this IP pitch that fits very much in line with what The Wretched is. You can probably guess what this IP is. Yeah. And they were like they narrowed it down to 3 people and they were gonna pick somebody that week, and they just decided to cancel the pitch. All
3. We're not doing all 3 of these.
And we're like, the thing that was this is probably a good hell no. You were talking about hell no's. It's like is you really got to assess because the amount of time, if you could total up the hours of all of the people that were involved in that, and all of the, it's probably at least a dozen or more people that had meetings and put together packages and spent weeks and stuff on this. It's got to be hundreds and hundreds of hours of free work at that.
Yeah. I think that's what everyone is getting so frustrated about recently. It's like the bureaucracy is really weighing it down. I have people who have already directors, writers, showrunners who have sold already. They're going. But then all of a sudden the execs are like, we got to show this other exec. We want a whole new deck. And I'm like, why? Tell them to read the script or look at the old deck. I'm like, I'm get a job out of it. So like, I can't complain too much, but it is, I'm just watching these people be beaten down by a system that they don't need to be.
I remember the first time I ever, because similar to you guys, like I did a lot of OWA stuff, and like I got really lucky early on, got a couple of the things that I pitched on that my reps are like, you're never going to get these things. And then I remember the first time I ever did a pitch where it was me and one other person and they picked neither of us. And I was like, wait, that's a thing? It's a fake job? And then I talked to somebody at one point who told me, oh yeah, I pitched on that project like 5 years ago, and there's like 3 other people who pitched on it years before me. It's like a rotating cycle of a project that's been in development for 10 years, but they never usually pick anybody. And I'm like, it's crazy.
We've had them come back to us like, do you guys want to pitch on this? And we're like, guys, we already pitched on that for you guys before. This is the same project.
Oh my God.
They don't know. I've forgotten that they tried to get us to pitch on.
We pitch on so many things at this point that like now we really assess that. We've had a couple of, I don't even want to name the production companies, big production companies tell us they love a concept that we just pitched them, and we won't intentionally take another meeting to pitch it forward because we know that it's like poker. You're going deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's going to get longer each time. Even if they loved it, you're like, but do we have any advantages?
Well, we become like really savvy in talking to other friends that are doing the same thing we're doing, going like, hey, and we don't mean, this doesn't make the person at the production company a bad person. We're like, what has been your story with developing with that? How far have you gone down the rabbit hole? Does it provide anything in the end? And some of them are just like, some people are it's great. They're honest. They're like, probably not worth it. Just don't push because you're going to do a lot of work for likely not to happen.
We do free work all the time for ourselves, but then you control it. If you're doing it on an IP thing, it's dead. You can't take it.
But if it's like a producer that we know just really likes us and it's really like maybe we almost got something else with them, or they took another script of ours out and they come to us, then we're like, we're going to pitch on this. They already really like us. We're a strong candidate for them. Then we're like, this is totally worth it. We're just not necessarily, unless it's like IP that we just adore. We're like, I got to swing at this, man. I have to do it. Other than that, we've kind of learned to be like, I don't want to pitch on that because I don't love that. And I know we're just one of like an army that's coming out to pitch on this. So.
I think we're also a little bit of a rare breed. Like we produce our own stuff. We hire producers to work with us, but we do a lot of the producing. So like at the end of the day, we can go do this ourselves, and that's that. We always try and hold on to that control because the hardest thing I think in this business is waiting for somebody to say yes to you in any position, anything.
We've always kind of like said, like, you got to be cooking something you can just go make on your own while you're cooking the other stuff. Because otherwise it's like, you just, especially in the last couple of years, I'd be like, because honestly, if you're not making anything, you're kind of not a filmmaker. So you got to, I've been telling Drew, I'm like, we're going to go make something in the fall, but we've been writing for like 5 years since The Wretched. I'm like, I don't want to write anything for a while. I need to like shoot something, do something else. It's like, I'm sick of writing.
And like,
you're talking to two writers here.
Yeah, I know.
No. But like, I'm always jealous of people who want to be filmmakers because I'm like, oh, you can like go do it. I don't know. It like intimidates me, I think. So I just like, I'm like too scared to go do it. But at some point, I think I'm going to become frustrated enough and have this like small idea and be like, okay, I've got to go out with it. But you guys to the IP are making your own IP ideally.
Yeah. Well, that's
with the Wretched sequel.
Yeah. And that was kind of the thinking because we had just finished a draft of something that we turned in. And after turning it in, we were kind of like, we just had this feeling like, I don't think they're going to make this, kind of same thing. I was like, just had this feeling and nothing's ever been said, but we're like, I just don't think they're going to make this. I love it, but I'm sick of waiting on people to let us make a movie kind of type thing. So
we've gone through the cycle of working on something for a while and then watching either the executives get let go and then your project's dead, all these different things that can happen that you have no control over.
Yeah. So we were about to start a new spec and I was just like, I'm just going to write Wretched 2. This like over the next 6 weeks. I know we plotted it out like 4 years ago because we were thinking about it. I'm just going to write it, and I wrote again.
So you wrote the sequel on spec. It wasn't like set up or greenlit.
No, I just wrote a shitty draft, like really, really fast. And it coincided with weirdly somebody reaching out to us out of the blue who was like an angel investor type person that was like, is anything going on with Wretched 2? And we were like, well, yeah, we got an idea and a bad script, but it's going to get better, the kind of type thing. And then we were like, and so we had to go back to our original investors and just say, hey, this is kind of getting serious with somebody in my cook. And that person was just like, I want to do it. And we were like, okay. So then we just pivoted completely to getting it set up with them. And we've been moving like since last fall, we've been kind of full time working on it to get the script into good shape, but also just prep the movie and organize it to shoot in the fall. So
yeah, we're about to start casting.
Yeah, we're about to start.
Is it bigger budget wise than the first one?
Yeah, it's a bigger film than the first one. It's a more ambitious
it's
movie.
like our Aliens to Alien. It's probably not quite that big of a jump, but it is a much bigger.
It's definitely got challenge, actiony horror. It's got a lot more practical effects. It's a bigger movie all around. It's kind of like Drew and I just. Our credo on it is like, I just want to kill the other movie. I love the other movie, but I want to just make a movie.
Back and talk so much better. We're going to have like ghost white hair by then.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. We're like Bruce Campbell and he's dead. We're just going to have the streak.
Yeah.
Well, I think we just got the scoop on the sequel. Bloody Disgusting is going to take this as a headline.
And run. So what does the pre-production look like for this round that's different than the first go around for you guys?
Well, we're about to dive into it. It's going to be similar, but it's going to be about we're probably shooting in Oregon. That's kind of the plan right now. And it's going to be a lot of the same, but just trying to find really good keys in Oregon. That's going to be the big difference. We already took a trip up there for like a week and a half and kind of
scouted everything.
That's going to be a big part of it, spending a lot of time.
But it's going to kind of be the same because Drew and I, like, even though we've got more to play with, we just told ourselves like we have to treat it like it was the last movie, because the last movie was like, try to put as much up on the screen as you possibly can. And we got to treat it exactly the same.
And the thing about, we're big on pre-production, like we're obsessed with. I mean, it's the only way to make a good movie cheap is that I storyboard everything we possibly can. We'll even make animatics. You try and figure out, you separate what's a practical effect. Is there any, like now we have a couple of digital effects here and there, but you try and isolate those things as perfectly as you can and figure out exactly, you kind of have to figure out exactly what you're doing with that stuff because it makes it so much cheaper.
Yeah.
So many horror movies, especially the bigger budget horror movies, they're just like, let's CG it or let's put it on the effects company and they'll figure it out.
Or even like creature effects. They'll be like, let's design a suit for the entire body of the creature. And then, but as a filmmaker, I'm like, I don't need to see the whole body. There's
nobody wants, we always joke, nobody wants to see a creature's feet.
Yeah.
No more feet on the creatures. Yeah. Don't spend the hour, stippling like little, like whatever texture on their feet.
This is my marketing brain. I need you both to be filming every step of these. Like, I want to see the storyboards. Like, you guys would have such good BTS to like give to whoever fights over this film.
Well, that's our lesson learned from the last movie. We took no BTS. Because we were like,
you want to do,
you don't have to do that. But this time we're like, we gotta do it. We do so much work. There's no like proof that we did it.
People love that. I genuinely. People love to see how movies are made. And like, even me, I'm like, I want to know what his storyboards look. I'm a very type A. So I'm like, what are they doing? And like, how is that happening? It's so exciting to watch it.
I mean, it's a pretty much a process of, we just start with the effects and action sequences, board those first, because those are the people that have to prep first. So you want to get on the same page with them, hear their ideas. So maybe they got a better idea. Maybe they got a better idea of like eliminating something that's maybe a little too expensive for something that might still work. So you kind of go through all those processes. That's the early stuff for us, is really just working with effects people and then eventually our DP, because we're hoping to bring on the same DP that we had last time. But he was kind of like, a third brother on the last movie because he boarded the whole movie with us. He had a photographic memory, so he kind of just remembered every shot.
We shot listed every single shot, prioritized.
Yeah, he had a Google document on his phone that had every shot in the movie on it.
That's the other challenge is just it's kind of the biggest challenge to making indie film and making stuff look good is the number of days. And that's the thing people don't talk about much, but like the number of days has eked away from 30, 40 plus back in the day to like sub 20. It's usually, there's a lot of indie movies shooting 12, 15 days now, which is absurd. You can't make anything great at that. All my favorite movies are 40 plus day shoots is the truth. Nobody gets 40 plus days. Like, you know, The Exorcist, they took 2 days to light that one famous shot with the light beaming through the window where he walks up.
Yeah.
Like they had to, you know, that would be done.
It was like 100-day shoot for The Exorcist or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be like a 15-day shoot now for.
Yeah. And like The Wretched was kind of like, let's meet in the middle. We fought to get 25 days to shoot the movie. And I think we just eked by, you know, like there's things in that movie, like I love that movie, but there's things that bug me because I felt like I shortchanged things because of time, you know, and stuff.
Because it was a really ambitious movie for the budget. There were so many sequences where we had to rely on like literally like 3 points of coverage for like a full scene, you know, like kind of like pick our battles and stuff or less inserts and all that kind of stuff. So
and we just kind of,
we're going to try and like build out a little bit more.
A while ago, when we finished The Wretched, we had shown the movie to Sam Raimi. He was one of the first people we showed the movie to, and he really liked it. Yeah, it was cool. But he had some advice about like shooting horror and stuff, and he was like, always take a day to shoot the horror scene, you know, like take a whole day. And we kind of like on the first The Wretched, we'd shoot a horror scene and 2 dialogue scenes, and then the scene when, you know, Ben's saying goodbye at the lake or something, like there'd be like all these things crammed into one. And so we're building this one out to kind of have these like key horror scenes that we just take a whole day.
One of the things that we noticed when you scroll deep into like the Amazon Prime of it all with like bad horror movies or whatever, like super indie movies, and you can tell how hard people have worked on these, but when you watch indie horror, one thing that we notice all the time, and we did this a little bit, The Wretched, and tried to build stuff out longer, is that the horror sequences, they build to a scare and then they're out. And my favorite horror movies build, have a turn, have a gross out, have another scare, have a twist, and then they're out. And that's what James Wan does. That's what all the ones that really people love, that live, you know, in people's minds, have these extra escalations. And that's what we've tried to do, is really build out our set pieces with this one.
Yeah.
Have you guys heard that that action horror is like very hot right now? Because I've heard this from like 2 different people recently.
I've never.
Yeah, it's you know how these things happen. It's always like, oh, we're looking for this. This is hot. Whatever.
That's cool.
That's really good timing.
Yeah, we just went through like, this is hot, this is not. We wrote a werewolf script that we loved, and it was kind of coming around to the Wolfman coming out. And as it was going out, everyone's like, well, everybody's got their werewolf thing, and nobody's, you know, everybody's set. Werewolves are hot. But they're already making them. And then it doesn't do well. And he's like, guys, werewolves are dead.
Yeah, so quickly. Like, oh, God.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that was
it's
really
gone back and forth on us like 4 times. We finished it, and they were like, yeah, it's happening. Everybody's looking for werewolf scripts. And then, back and forth.
Yeah.
And so what will the post process be for y'all, and what does distribution look like for you for number 2?
Post, it'll just be us. Same thing. We kind of ran all the posts last time.
Wow.
We just kind of seek out everybody we're going to use. We'll probably use a lot of people that we used last time because they were really great for us. But it's just Drew and I kind of supervise all the elements of the post and put it together. I mean, we cut the first movie like in this corner here with the editor. We'll probably do something similar. But for distribution, we retained the rights to like sequels and stuff for The Wretched. So we haven't specifically lined anything up with anybody. Like IFC released the first one,
and we had a great relationship with them. We think they'd be interested. For us, the main goal is we just want to do a decent theatrical. Yeah, like that's kind of there's the thing. We're in a point with horror where, you know, there's a lot of indie horror that have done 100,000 theaters plus.
Yeah, 1,000 theaters.
100,000 would be great.
Yeah.
And obviously the success of, you know, like a bunch of the IFC stuff, and Terrifier and Neon has had a bunch, you know, Cuckoo and some of these different ones that that's kind of the aim.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we just kind of, like you guys said, it was like, oh, I think we didn't realize it till like last summer. Like we kind of have our own IP. We have a horror movie that's been on Netflix and, in theaters, and it keeps getting put on other streaming services. So it's like, why wouldn't we see if somebody wants to make that? And, people do. So it's like.
No, yeah, you guys will literally have IP, which is the most sought after thing in the world.
I know. So crazy. Yeah. And the IP always drives me nuts because sometimes you get sent IP and you're just kind of like, is this IP? Because I'm like, I don't know what this is.
That has happened to me. I think like I used to say that the craziest one I had was like Peeps marshmallow candy, but I would say the craziest one that I had after that was it was just based on a hotel chain, like a luxury hotel chain, and they wanted to incorporate that somehow and make a hot movie with hot people that plugged this hotel chain. And I was like,
yeah, no. He passed.
Yeah, that is a funny thing.
We always get thrown into the body horror monster stuff. Yeah. So if it has any of all the minutes of that, if there's anybody coming out of bodies.
They'll send us scripts and we'll read it. And they're like, this is so good for you guys. You guys are good at this stuff. And then we read it. It's like, oh, somebody climbs out of somebody's body. So that's that's why we got
That's what we do.
Yeah.
This is so funny. I was like, obviously Googling you guys, and your guys, the Pierce brothers is a very, you're a folk duo. You also own a chain of funeral homes.
I know that. I know.
Yeah. The name, I was like, wait.
You got to diversify if you're an independent filmmaker.
That's not the worst branding,
That is key branding. Yes.
We make our production company like Pierce Brothers Mortuary.
Yeah.
And so you guys are obviously have a ton of success in this indie world. Do you like always just want to live in that and like get fed, get your bills paid by doing these other gigs?
I think we want to live in both. I just think we always want to be making things we really want to make. And I think you can do that within the studio. Like, as much as like I'm griping about some of the things that we've written for them not getting made, it's only because I ultimately end up loving those scripts and those projects. And I just really want to make them. And it's like, I just don't want to ever, that's what I talk about, like passing on things that I just don't think I'm right for, is that I want to make sure I'm in love with the idea and the script and the story to even make it. And that's the only, I don't know how, because sometimes we've been sent, open directing assignment stuff. And, it's great. It's funded. They're going to make the movie. And sometimes like, I just really don't like the script. And you get pressured a little bit, like, you guys should do this. There's money. And I'm just like, I don't know how to make a movie that I don't like and just go make it. That doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't compute in my brain at all. Like, I would rather like starve because it's too much work, and it's like, I gotta care about it.
Well, and like if something else comes along that is actually perfect and you're like, shit, I signed up for this movie I hate.
Yeah, exactly. Like we've even like, a couple things have come down. Like there was another IP thing that came to us, and when we first heard it, we're like, I don't want to do that. And then we thought about it for just a little bit. We're like, ooh, but I got an idea that I think's really cool. And ultimately we ended up pitching it. We got it and we did a bunch of drafts of it. And now I love it. I want to make that movie, It's like, so it's different.
It kind of goes back to what you were saying early on about working in reality TV, and you keep getting promoted and you want to stay in this like stable place. And then you were like, oh, why did I leave that? And like I've had in my own career, I had that with this animation gig that I eventually walked away from because I wanted to spread my wings. And I was just having a meeting with this director yesterday who is kind of doing the same thing you guys are doing. It's just like the hustle, like pitching on this, trying to generate my own stuff. But all of his friends write these massive animated IP movies. And he's like, they have houses. They're like feeding their families. But it's the grass is always greener, right? It's always like, oh, why did I walk away from this stable thing? But then you think about all the different projects that you never could have pitched on, all the weird little side quests that you go on because you walked away from the stable thing. It does seem like the grass is always greener, but it's like when I think back about when I was an assistant, I was generating some of my best stuff because I was like, I got to get out of here. I'm so like inspired. So it's tough finding that balance,
One of our best buddies is this writer, Dan Casey. We went to high school with him. We made indie horror stuff with him back in Michigan. And now he wrote the last Fast and the Furious, previous Fast and the Furious 9, part 9. He did Bug Traps with 10 Cloverfield Lane. He's working on like a big TV show thing now, like IP TV show thing. And it is. Sometimes he's a little jealous of the fact that we're directing because we're still kind of like making the thing because he was a director. He's like a big time Hollywood screenwriter and he wants to get back. And he's an amazing director. He's an amazing director. I know he's going to get back to it, but it's, I think we have a little bit of jealousy like, oh, you're going to buy your, second house. And we're like, hey, we get to go make our movie. Yeah. We always say it's like Walt Disney, though. We just make movies to be able to make. Yeah, that's sort of the goal. And if we can just make it, bigger stuff, medium stuff, we just want to be able to make it sustainable so we can continue to do this. Yeah. We've watched so many people kind of burn out at this. Yeah. Yeah. Which I understand. It's really, really hard. And it's barely, I would even say like we've done pretty good, but I still feel like sometimes I'm like, it feels like it's barely a job, but I guess it is a job. I don't know. So it's like,
And what would you say? I'm sure young filmmakers, you guys said it, come up to you and ask you questions all the time. What do you say if someone's like, I'm gonna make my feature film? Like, what is my first step?
I feel like Brett and I both have the same. Sometimes you end up getting dark on these people that are like, let's get ourselves now, because you realize how their cloudy view of what it is or how you get in it. You start to kind of go into the reality of it, and you're like, oh no, I don't want to discourage them. They should be at least a little dumb or a little naive to whatever's coming or how hard it is.
Yeah. I think it's because I know like being naive is probably the only reason we did it so many times and continue to do it in some aspects, so you kind of need that. But I think more than anything, I just try to like tell them about the realistic, basically I want to remove the things that they're going to chase that are going to waste their time. I think that's the thing that I always try to like, whenever they're like, hey, I got this producer who's thinking about giving me money. If only I can get these 2 actors attached, and then he might get it, give me the money. And I'm like, if you attach those actors, why do you need that producer? You can get, it's like,
There's a common denominator with it. Like, because we still, especially after The Wretched, we'll get approached by like a filmmaker every couple of months will like email us or call me directly because somewhere they find my contact, and I'll like meet with them or chat with them for an hour and stuff. But one of the big pitfalls is always that they're hoping to get somebody cast is one thing, right? Where they don't have any connections or they don't have any, they're a first time filmmaker or they're trying to, that's like one big pitfall. The other thing is everybody's always waiting to get $2 to $5 million for the first feature. And they've never made anything other than shorts. And if you're not like a Nepo baby or you don't have a rich parent, that's probably never going to happen. A lot of people are hoping that the script they'll get it through like sales agents, kind of that old model, which doesn't really happen because cast doesn't mean as much as it used to unless you have Nick Cage. There's not too many of those people. You used to be able to get like Kevin Sorbo or whatever, and make money on DVD sales in Slovenia or whatever. But that just doesn't exist. And everybody's waiting for the like $3 million feature to come along. But the truth is they almost always have to make the guys that we see that are, we have a whole giant indie film community of horror filmmakers. A lot of the guys that have been pretty successful have been like cranking out $200,000 movies that they got funding through either one investor, usually it's a family or a friend kind of thing. And they've banged out 2, 3, 4 of those movies. And that's kind of the best path.
Yeah. It's easy. It's a grind. Naturally be like, I need the 3 to 5 million. And then you never make your movie. You're better off like going find 500K or less and make the smaller movie. Just so you have something that's coming out.
Which is a tough pill to swallow. It's really hard to make a movie like that. But it's
I think sounds crazy to people, but it really is to like being naive and kind of delulu.
Mm-hmm.
That makes you kind of scrappier in it where you're like, oh, well, I could just have this come in and then this happens. And it's almost better to try to have less money when you're starting out.
There's 2 guys, the Benson and Moorhead, they made a bunch of independent films, like very low budget. And now they're making Marvel stuff. And the reason they're making Marvel stuff is because their movies were good and they just kept making stuff. They were like, I don't care if a studio makes my movie. I'm making a movie, and it's like
they're still scrappy.
They're still scrappy. They're still making movies on the
side. They made that Something in the Dirt movie. That was like a pandemic project. Yeah.
I think that's, if you want to break in, that's the way to break in. That's also just the way to get to make your movies either way. It's like we all should be doing that, So.
It's also a thing for writers too, is I think like trying to, there's a lot of filmmakers out there that desperately want to make the $200,000, $500,000 movie. everybody is writing to like get the studio to make a movie. But the other path is to write things that indie filmmakers can produce, because there's so many guys. People hate writing just in general. There's so many indie filmmakers out here that are like trying to write their script, but they're not writers and that's not their thing. But if, writers can create stuff like that for those guys to produce.
That's fun, because that is such a disconnect. Like, I don't think, like, I'm not meeting a lot of directors. I meet a lot of the producers, obviously, like inside the circle. So that's like a very fun, I don't know how you connect all those people, of Slack channel of sorts, but something. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really smart.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think making your own stuff is always the way to go, because you just never know when something's going to move. And it's cool when something moves. You're like, holy crap, it's happening. But you can never like plan on it. Like even like some of the things we got, we were like, they're never going to hire us to write that. And then they did. It's like,
I think it's becoming a quick through line on this podcast of just trying to make something for yourself. And because that same director I was talking to yesterday, like he had a script that, same thing. It's like you get these things dangled in front of you. He had this like horror script that he was told like shoot for, 15 million because it's kind of a bigger movie. He wrote it. The producers were like, okay, we really, really like this, but the magic number is like 10 now. So then he rewrote it, made it 10. They read it again. They're like, actually, the magic number is like 7. So he like took some stuff out, said it again. And then they're like, okay, the magic number is 4 and we shoot it in Bulgaria.
Yeah.
And it's like, you get these things dangled in front of you and it's just a wild goose chase.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, they always give you like, they're like, we're thinking we're going this like fourth quarter this year. You're like, it's never going to happen. Like back then I was like, cool, fourth quarter. I'm like, well, count that as maybe a year or two from now instead. It's like,
yeah. Well, that is, it's part of why I kind of love TikTok and all these like young creators there too. Cause it just reminds me of how much you could do and how much I did as a kid. I had like this little blue camera with my friend Chrissy, and like the shit that we managed to come up with just on our own. Like I watched these TikTok kids and I'm like, you have so much storytelling talent. And that's really the hardest part. Cause then when someone gives you money, you'll figure out or find partners to tell you how to correctly use that.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, what they're really just looking is for people, because they're scared of not being able to tell a story well. So they don't care if it's cheap or expensive. They just want to know you can tell a story well, that you're going to solve their problem and do it, And so it's, that's like the real, honestly, it was funny. Like with our movie coming out, it was like, oh, look, here's the guys that can solve making a creature feature. That's what we became. We're the guys that can solve that problem for them, and as much as you can do that on any level, be it TikTok or whatever, if they see good storytelling, that's what's worth the most out of anything,
So you guys are filming in the fall.
Yep.
That's very soon. It's already almost May, which is like,
oh my God.
Sorry. I'm sure that you guys are like, don't remind us.
I know. We have so much to do because we do so much of it ourselves. so it's not at the point where we have too many other people helping out on anything yet. So it just, at this point, it feels overwhelming. But as soon as you get a couple other people taking a few things off your plate that you're not really the best at, you're kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, it's all good. We're fine. So
is there anything else you guys are really hyped about? Or is it all focused on this?
It's all that. We have
a bunch of specs that we want to work on and stuff, but
we have one kind of going out that we really, really love. But honestly, it's like, we know we get to make this. So we're just like, this is what's in front of us. This is the thing we're excited about. It's the most for sure thing happening out of all of them. So all the other ones are kind of really secondary. It's like, it's cool. But like, we've even told our manager, like, we'll still pitch on some stuff, but we're going to be really selective. And like, he even sends us scripts and we'll be like, I don't know if I'm going to read this really soon. It might take me a couple of weeks just because, we're kind of, as much as like, writing takes a long time and directing takes a long time, we're also producing a movie. So I think
we want to
break
things the writing. We've just been doing so much of it for the last couple of years, especially. And we also learn so much when we make movies, because when you actually like in the production of it, and especially in editing, you learn so much about writing, about what works and what actually doesn't. When the rubber hits the road, you really feel it. It's so hard to really, you have to, we're in the process right now of getting notes back on our script and stuff, but like people don't ever see the movie as well as when it's made. And that's when you really feel if something's
Yeah. And I feel like I think why we're really excited to be doing this ourselves is the process of writing stuff for other people has made us better writers and made us like really sweat our own stuff. So I think we're just so happy with the script that we have, that like the parts you get scared of aren't, it's not that is the story working or not. It's like, can we pull some of these things off that we really want to do? I just want them to work the way I see them.
Every time we finish a movie, you get so much feedback that you start to, you know, that you learn an insane amount about how to introduce a character, how to like set up their flaw, how to all the screenwriting things. Cause you actually like because you spend a year having to watch that with other people every time, and you hear every little nuance of what people think that that's in your head every time you're writing.
Yeah. So I think we're just excited because, I mean, making a movie for the studio or not for the studio, it's still making a movie. So we don't care. It's as long as we get to create that like playground of doing what we love, we're happy. So, you know.
Well, we love to end our episode with a question. We always ask if you could share a high, low, or hell no from your career. I know we talked about the IP and some of the hell no's, but
I can think of my high. My high was probably, he was talking about how we got to show the movie to Sam, who I look up to beyond. So does this guy. Since we were little kids, not just as like a filmmaker, but as like a producer and as a person, because he's just the most genuine, sweet guy. And at the screening, we rented this theater in LA. It was probably cost us like $1,500. And it was just Brett, me, Sam, and then his assistant. You know, Sam's making popcorn and he goes in and he's taking a seat. I'm just like, we hadn't shown the movie to anybody at this point, right? Like nobody. So I'm also like, is the movie good? Like we had shown it to a couple of filmmaker friends for notes and stuff. But I'm like, I have to sit next to Sam Raimi. Like I can't not show Sam Raimi a movie and just sit like 3 rows behind him. How am I going to? So I sat like 1 seat away from him.
Yeah. I sat in front of him because I was like, I'm not sitting next to Sam Raimi. I don't want to see his face.
And he, you know, he loved the movie. And honestly, I feel like I blacked out afterwards. He was gushing about what he liked about the movie and ended up giving us a quote. It was just like the best moment of my life.
Yeah.
I've heard it's crazy because I've heard like 2 or 3 other people in the last couple months I've talked to, genre filmmakers, who he kind of either helped out or watched an early cut of something, and it's like he is has such a good reputation as kind of just nurturing young genre filmmakers.
Yeah, we'd love to make something for him just because he also has the mentality of like, you got to make the best movie you can, and he pushes for that with the stuff at his company.
And he buys into filmmakers. He doesn't buy into necessarily people that are like crazy established. He'll just be like, I feel like Fed Alvarez hadn't done it really much. He had done it short. Like a lot of the filmmakers he's picking now. Yeah, he just kind of jumps on board. It's cool.
Yeah,
I would throw up if that had happened to me. So understandably.
Should we both do highs or do you just want to do lows? What makes you sad, Brett?
I know. My high, my high low back to back. My high was Wretched was #1 at the box office. And my low was in the same week because I also filed for unemployment.
That's amazing. That is very Hollywood to be like, I have the #1 movie and here's my unemployment.